Hello, my name is Grace Marchiniak, and I'm currently standing at the Corporal Larry E. Smedley National Vietnam War Museum here in Orlando, Florida. Recently, I was able to interview some local veterans who are members here and really hear about their stories and experiences during their time serving. I really hope you enjoy because we worked so hard to make this possible. This is the Corporal Larry E. Smedley National Vietnam War Museum. It is a nonprofit organization owned and operated by the Vietnam veterans of Central Florida. It was founded in 1982, but officially named after Corporal Smedley in 2000. This museum is run by veterans for veterans. It doesn't matter where or when you served, all are welcome. When I first arrived, I immediately wanted to find out about Corporal Larry Eugene Smedley and why the museum had chosen him to represent them. He was born on March 4, 1949 in Front Royal, Virginia. He later moved to Orlando, Florida, and that is where he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1966. When he turned 18, Smedley arrived in Vietnam. He became squad leader for Company D. On December 21, 1967, Corporal Smedley led his squad to an ambush site in Happy Valley. An enemy rifle grenade exploded nearby and wounded him in the right foot. Even though he was severely injured, he rose to his feet and kept encouraging his men. He continued to fire his weapon and throw grenades when he was struck again. Though now he was injured in 2 places, he rose and was able to destroy an enemy machine gun. He was then struck in the chest and succumbed to his wounds at the age of only 18. He was awarded the Medal of Honor and buried at Arlington National Cemetery.
He was wounded numerous times. Part of his left foot was actually shot off when he fell. He woke up, as we call it, waking up, got back up, back into the fight. He was hit a couple of additional times as he was throwing grenades to take out the machine gun nest. He finally was struck, which killed him instantly. If you would see the picture of Corporal Smedley probably stood 5'6", 5'5", maybe 110 pounds soaking wet. That's why I made the comment. You never know who the hero is going to be.
And I met many heroes on this day. Along with Richard, the vice president, I also had the pleasure of meeting with Mike and Bob, who are members. Mike served in law enforcement as a police officer, and Bob served in Vietnam from 1969 to 1971. They were eager to show me around the museum and made sure that I saw everything. They even shared some interesting stories with me.
This is an actual representation of Firebase Charlie Delta 5 that was located in Vietnam. There was a medevac pilot that used to send pictures home to his family before he finally was shot down and killed in action. When the family found out about his passing, his 8-year-old son wanted to do something to memorialize his father. So he started building this. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, it took him approximately 10 years to complete.
That little square building without a roof, that's the latrine. If you look inside, there's a gentleman sitting down reading the paper.
Oh my God. John D. Llewellyn the first, the senior, my grandpa.
Wow.
He was wounded, and after World War I, he spent 1.5 years in France recuperating. My dad, I never knew him. I was 2 when he passed away. My dad said he had 9 holes in him. He got hit with a machine gun, and he was hit 9 times.
These came off the USS Wichita, which is a World War II Navy cruiser. You see that little white square down there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it's focused on.
When I arrived, it was a rainy Sunday morning. The museum is open on weekends only from 12 to 5 p.m. They have an impressive collection both outside and inside of war memorabilia such as a tank, helicopter, weapons, and items donated from veterans' families.
The equipment that we have internally here in the museum itself has been donated by deceased veterans' families that unfortunately didn't want a reminder of the individual that passed away, or from our membership that had all the different items that we currently have, just to display, to help restore and remember the Vietnam era soldier, sailor, airmen, and Marines. The helicopter was given to us by the United States Army Reserve Unit, which is that detachment on the Mickey Mouse plaque, because that unit had disbanded, and that actual helicopter that is out there was flown in Vietnam and Afghanistan.
The museum is free of charge, but accepts donations, which I highly encourage those who visit to do. This way, the exhibits are able to receive proper upkeep, and the museum is able to keep its doors open to continue to educate civilians and support veterans.
We've never asked for funding. Would it be nice to have funding? Of course it would, because that means we could do so much more for the community, not just here for Central Florida, but we get people from all over the world coming to our organization to see what we have. And it could be so much better, but we survive. We've been here 33 years, and we continue to grow both in spirit and our membership.
I, of course, also had to visit the latrine, toilets. My uncle, who had served in Vietnam, had always told me that whoever got the short end of the stick was in charge of cleaning them out. This was something that I couldn't imagine ever doing, sitting next to multiple people at a time. I was told that they constantly were emptying the buckets to prevent disease. This really makes you think about all the sacrifices the men made. After my tour, I met with Carl E. Dahlberg, a member and Vietnam veteran who served from 1964 to 1969. He was so gracious and answered all of my questions. I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it, so having him take the time to come talk with me really made me appreciate this opportunity even more. So I want to start off with your full name.
Carl E. Dahlberg.
And so you were in the Vietnam War. What were the years that you were?
64 to 65 and 67 to 69. I got 3 years in there.
And then were you were you drafted, or did you?
No, I'm volunteer.
You volunteered. Why did you do that?
Seemed like a good idea at the time. I was 21 when I went in the Marine Corps. Yeah, 20.
21.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really young.
You step into anything new, you're always a little apprehensive of something
Mhm.
new. But I had been in the Marine Corps for 2 years when I went over there. So, and I'd been in the Fleet Marine Force, which we were aboard ship and floated around a lot. There must have been about 5 or 6 times we were told we're going to go in someplace and didn't go in. So we were part of the Fleet Marine Force in readiness. And we were just waiting to go in, but never got to go in until finally we wound up going to Da Nang Airport. That was 65.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background, where you were born, where you grew up?
New Jersey. Grew up in New Jersey, all around the, Linden, New Jersey, which is 7 miles south of Newark, if you know where that is.
So where was your basic training?
All right, basic training, Marine Corps Boot Camp, Paris Island. And I went to officer school, got trained at Quantico there, officer training.
So how was when you had basic training? Do you think it prepared you in a way, or do you think nothing could prepare you?
Now, the basic training, you learn a lot of basic tactics. You learn how to use weapons, how to use them. And the one thing I got in, the several things I got in basic training. One was we played a little bit with explosives, not much, but enough to get started. And I got to be a real expert at explosives because I was put in a couple of positions where you were using explosives to clear fields of fire. So after a while, you start catching on. And matter of fact, as you catch on, you become arrogant, and you got to be careful with that because explosives are not very forgiving. You don't want to make mistakes with those things.
And then what was your MOS?
Infantry,
Infantry.
03. What we did was we had the infantry companies, rifle companies, were usually set by themselves out so that Marine Corps could expand the perimeter. And the Army didn't take to that too much. They like to keep everything in group in the battalion when you have a big group. The Marine Corps like to put the small groups out there. Now, I was a platoon commander when I went over there. So I had 45, 50 men under my command. And of course, we very rarely went out as a whole platoon. Most of the time, we had to send a squad here, a squad there, and something else went someplace else there. So it was kind of fragmented. And the thing that turned out to be a very bad move was the replacement cycle that the Department of Defense started in Vietnam. Prior to that, you take a whole unit, move a whole unit out, put a whole unit in. Somebody got the idea it was more cost effective to replace individuals at a time. Okay, the only trouble is every time you get new guys in, the new guys were kind of shunned a little bit. They didn't know how to keep their heads down. And so a lot of new guys got hit early because they didn't know how to keep their heads down. It set up some groups in there, but after a while you got together and eventually you hung together as a good team because that's the only way to survive, really. Well, not really survive. That's the only way to get along there. I don't like the word survival. If you had a high school diploma, you pretty much went to one specialty field. Almost everybody in the infantry was a high school dropout, which, by the way, although a lot of them could not read well, they could think. And they caught on to jungle warfare. So when somebody says, oh, they're just dumb, no. They were not educated, but they were not dumb. So, and I really remember those guys because they caught on real well.
I saw on your card that you have a Purple Heart. What happened to you to receive that?
You give me your finger.
My finger?
You feel that thing?
Yeah.
That's part of a bullet.
I can't believe it's still there.
Now the bullet, I was leading an armor patrol, and I didn't find this out till after I come back I was on a hospital ship for 6 weeks. Finally come back, and it just happened to be, I got reassigned to another company, and it just happened to be that the armored vehicles that I was on was assigned to that company. And the one driver, hey, Lieutenant, come here. You want to see where the bullet hit and got you? What are you talking about? So on the side of the hatch, there's this nice shiny mark. So a bullet hit there and splattered. I got to splatter my hand to my knee because I was sitting down behind the hatch. Now I had the bullet been over 1 bullet diameter. I had the whole thing right here. So that's called luck.
I wanted to ask a little bit too about when you came back. What was that like for you coming back, from being basically in a completely different
yeah, it was
world?
completely different. Now I came back through San Francisco, and I had to see a family because it was a good friend of mine was killed. So I just went over to see them, pay my respects, and some people around the area, they were really pissed off at me. You didn't know who I was, but just because I was in uniform, bad. And there was so much, there was only about 3 or 4 people really running their mouths. You just wanted to smack the shit out of them, really. That's all you wanted to do with them. I decided I was not going to go see any more families who lost people. So that just ended that idea. And when I got back to Jersey, wasn't much. Had a couple of the people who served in World War II come up and thank me, but that's it. Didn't know much. So it was kind of a lukewarm greeting. You didn't know too much. That was 69 when I came back, so there was a lot of anti-war sentiment out then. So other than that, go on about your business. Life goes on.
I had heard that the Vietnamese were experts at guerrilla warfare. Was there a time that you ever experienced this firsthand?
No, nothing like that. I do have one item that shows you what they're capable of. To show you how ingenious they were. That's one of their grenades.
Oh my gosh.
Now that's homemade.
Wow.
And we captured a lot of those things, and I just grabbed one of them, but I know we were destroying them 20, 30 at a time.
So you just grabbed this, you found
it. It was sitting there. We blow them in place. I just took it as a souvenir.
Carl had a few more items left to show me. It was amazing that he was able to hold on to them for all of these years. That's heavy.
That's part of a shell. I figure it's about probably a 155. It's probably one of these babies here.
Oh my gosh.
That's a splinter. Here's something else you might find interesting.
Oh, this is a bullet?
Yeah, that's the bullet from 50 caliber machine gun.
That's
Well,
crazy.
you felt this piece?
Yeah.
Okay. Doctor said, I can take that out. I said, no, it's in there. It's a nice conversation piece. Why do I want to take it
But
out?
can I feel it again? I want to feel it. It's right here.
You feel it?
Oh yeah.
So I stayed in the Marine Corps a few more years. Then when I got out, I went to training, became an accountant and an auditor.
So when did you first come to this museum for the first time?
I mean, sometime in summer 2016, but when we moved down here.
2016. What do you think of it? What was your first impression?
They got a nice collection of artifacts. It's nice. I'm really surprised they got that jet out there, that A4. That's a big piece of machinery.
Yeah, I saw that last time. Something that stuck out to me was the canine memorial. It was incredibly moving to hear about the dogs who also sacrificed their lives. It's not something you hear often about. I noticed out there, they don't talk about it a lot. There's a statue of the dog. Did you guys have in where you were dogs?
Nice story about that too. In one area, I had 4 dog teams assigned to my company. Now we were patrolling north of Da Nang. Usually when we had to interrogate somebody, I tell the handlers which dog to bring up, depending upon the impression I wanted to make. Now, if I want to scare him, get Caesar. You know, because the Vietnamese knew the dog smelled Vietnamese, and if that dog got loose, it's coming for him. Now, if he was kind of cooperative, Shane was the other dogs. I remember the names real well. And Shane apparently was a very smart dog because he would sit down next to me. His handler would be right there on the leash. Now, ordinarily around a sentry dog, you don't move your hands because the dog going to go for it. But somehow or other, this dog got to like me, and I could move my hands around there.
So were there a lot of casualties with the dogs? Because I'm a big animal person, so
Yes, there were some casualties with the dogs. There weren't, I don't know how many, but there were some. Because the dogs would get out there and they could sniff. And of course, the dogs are smaller footprint. They may not trip as many booby traps, but they could smell them. And I know there were dogs that got hit. So the real unfortunate thing was if the dog's handler got hit and handler got evacuated, they'd have to put the dog to sleep because the dog was trained for that handler.
One of the last statements Carl said to me was very impactful. It's hard to imagine the mindset one must have when they are in war, wondering if they will survive each day. I thought this was such a heroic way of thinking.
You try this on. A lot of people say war is kill or be killed. And I say that's the amateur's view. The professional thinks my job is to get the other guy to give his life for his country. You get that attitude. And a lot of guys had different ways of expressing it. Some of them said, there's this big book up in the sky. And if the page turns and your name's on it, nothing you can do. So why worry about it? You get a little bit of a fatalist idea. Hey, proud to serve.
Thank you so much for your service. We really respect that.
So it's you get out there, you do it, and everybody. Yeah, it's just an attitude comes in there. So
it was such a great experience being able to interview Carl. He is so brave and humble about his service. I was honored to be able to interview him. We said our goodbyes, and I let him return to his wife, who was patiently waiting in the car during our interview. I was invited to have a wine night at their house one day, and I'll definitely take them up on that offer. This is just an example of how the museum brings people from all walks of life together. I sat down next with Richard Templin, the once president, now vice president of the museum. He had such a calming presence, and I could see how passionate he was about the museum and what it stands for.
Yes.
Could you give me your full name?
Richard Keith Templin.
And you were in the Army.
I was in the Army.
How long?
20 years.
And what were the dates that you were?
1978 to 1998.
And what made you join the Army?
My mother made me join the Army. I was one of those children. I was the only boy in the house with 3 sisters. My parents were 16 and 17 when I was born, and they were not educated. They quit high school. I came home one night after a binge, drunken binge, and I see a government car sitting in my driveway. I'm saying, oh my God, I finally got caught. What was it that I did this time? Anyway, to make a long story short, I go into the house and my mother says, sit your ASS down and listen to what this man has to say. Yes, ma'am, 3 bags full. And that was the start of my military career.
So where did you go for basic training?
I went for basic training to Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
What was that like?
At first, it was a little, I'm not going to say frightening, but it's a different culture than what I was used to. Other than my mom and dad telling me what to do, when to do it, now I have the drill sergeant tell me when to get up, when to go to the restroom, when to take a break. Totally different.
And what was your MOS?
I was a 13 Bravo, Juliet 4 hotel.
So what did that consist of doing?
13 Bravo is artillery, field artillery. The Juliet 4 was nuclear weapons, and the hotel was instructor.
So when did you join as a member here, and what made you join? Because I know this is not just for Vietnam veterans. I saw on
This
the
is not.
website.
I was not a Vietnam veteran. My son, my youngest son, who at the time was probably 6 or 7, him and I were riding our bicycles past the site here, and I passed this location numerous times throughout the first few years that we moved here. And he goes, Dad, look, there's a tank, there's a tank. And I looked over and I said, oh my, I can't believe this. And so we came in because the gates were open, even though it was during the weekday. I did some looking around. I found a individual that was here, and I, informed them I'm a retired veteran. What can I do to be part of this organization? Because it's the camaraderie through any veteran that you still want to feel part of. Because part of me was lost when I retired in '98, and like I said, I think I stated I've been here 8 years. This is my passion, and we all have a passion. We just don't know what that passion is. And the day my son and I rode our bikes past here, I said, this could be a start for me, to get me out of my rut, so to speak. And when I can talk to somebody about my life experience, my military experience, it's near and dear to me, number one, but it's a part of our history that if I don't do it, who's going to do it? Remember that.
My interview with Richard was both impactful and emotional. He truly is such an interesting guy, and I could tell how much he cares about this museum and keeping it open for generations to come. I thanked him for his service and couldn't believe, like Carl, how humble he was. My time at the Corporal Larry E. Smedley National Vietnam War Museum was coming to an end. Overall, I felt emotional and inspired by the veterans I met. This museum is in great hands, and I hope more people will come and support those who sacrificed so much for us and America.